One of the questions I get on a fairly regular basis is, Dave, you're the head of podcaster education at Libsyn. How do you handle if someone has a question about Buzzsprout or Captivate or Blueberry or any of the other 8 billion hosts that are out there? And the answer is simple. For me, I present the facts. I try to keep my opinion out of it and then go, based on this fact, this host does this. This host does this and costs this much. This host does this. And then you decide. And if you pick Libsyn, great. If you don't, I'm assuming you're picking it because you have different needs that might be met by a different host. And I've had people go, well, the School of Podcasting, he's never going to talk about anything but Libsyn. And so I'm here today to go, no, I think you're wrong on that, because I'm interviewing Alban Brooke from Buzzsprout. And the reason I'm doing this is also, back in the day, Adam Curry, one of the very first podcasts was called The Daily Source Code. And Adam would talk about all things from all over the globe that was happening in podcasting. And then Adam started a media host. And if you ever hear him say you can't monetize the network, is because he had 36 million chances to do that. And what was originally Pod Show and later Mevio was a network he started that just didn't quite work. But when he started Pod Show, he kind of quit talking about all the other things in podcasting. And I remember being very disappointed because I wanted that to be my go-to show for all things podcasting. So if you've ever thought that Dave's a shill for Libsyn, look, I love Libsyn. It's a great job. It's a great company, and we would love to have you while I'm here. Use the coupon code SOP-FREE to get a free month. But I also realize that there are other things happening in podcasting, and the School of Podcasting has always tried to be somewhat like Switzerland, where we get along with everyone. So today, I am bringing on Alban Brooke. He has been the marketing manager at Buzzsprout for almost 10 years. And when we recorded this, we had both just got back from Podcast Movement Evolutions. And we're going to share our insights from that conference, as well as general questions like, everybody's favorite. How do you grow your podcast? Hit it, ladies.
The School of Podcasting with Dave Jackson.
Podcasting since 2005. I am your award-winning Hall of Fame podcast coach, Dave Jackson, thanking you so much for tuning in. If you are new to the show, this is where I help you plan, I help you launch, I help you grow, and if you want to monetize your podcast. My website is schoolofpodcasting.com. Use the coupon code LISTENER when you sign up for either a monthly or yearly subscription, and join worry-free with a 30-day money-back guarantee. So yeah, I have met Alban over the years. We bump into each other at different conferences. And unlike radio, most podcast companies, we hang out together. I love Todd Cochran. I love Mike Dell, Mark over at Captivate, and Danny and Jordan and Alban and everybody. Like, who else can I geek out about podcasting with? And so, yes, I know the minute we turn around, I'm going to say things about Buzzsprout, and Todd's going to say things about Libsyn, and then Mark's from Captivate's going to say something. Look, it's business, but there's no reason we have to fight with each other. So with that, I give you Alban Brooke, head of marketing at Buzzsprout. Everything we talk about today, you can find at schoolofpodcasting.com/928. As Alban is the head of marketing at Buzzsprout, I thought, well, the one question that we always hear, and the one that you probably want to hear, is, hey, how do I grow my podcast? And I really wanted to tap into his answer because of his marketing background.
My standard answer is, first off, congratulations on starting, and for starting the one that's the hardest to grow. Newsletters and social and blogs and video are all easier by a good bit to grow than a podcast. Podcasts are the hardest of all of them. I've done all of them. It's even for me working at a podcasting company, it's the hardest, but it has the greatest dividends because on a blog piece of content where somebody will read it for like 2.5 minutes, my videos on YouTube, it'll be like 45 seconds of watch time. TikTok, it's like 12 seconds of watch time. Those are, you get one view or one interaction or one follow there. And so, the number one is prevalent, but you got to multiply by how long they've paid attention. On podcasting, we've got much smaller download numbers. We have much smaller audience numbers. But what I consistently see is in a 45-minute episode, my average duration, if someone starts it, is like 36 minutes, 38 minutes. Most people are finishing the entire episode. That's so different than any other medium. It's also important to remember everywhere else, YouTube decides, is this video good enough to even show to your subscribers? If I post on Twitter and I have 6,000 followers, but Twitter doesn't think I write great tweets, they're going to show it to like 100 of my followers. So even though I earned those followers at some point, I grew my audience, I'm not able to reach them. So they're still not really my audience. Podcasting, if you are subscribed, that episode shows up on your player. If you're actually listening to episodes, it's showing up in your players, and people are listening like 38 minutes out of a 45-minute episode. So all that to be said, the fact that you're doing podcasting, it's going to be slower than all the others, and it's going to pay greater dividends because the relationship is going to be so much deeper.
And I love that answer because I think the number one thing that kills podcasters, it's having unrealistic expectations. But I know you're probably going, okay, yeah, right, mindset, whatever. How do I grow my audience?
The number one way to grow a podcast is to keep podcasting. It's very easy to get discouraged because you're on a slower journey and you see, wow, I've done 3 episodes and I'm only at 20 downloads per episode. That's actually probably about above average for the industry. Once you get up into the 30s, Buzzsprout across 120,000 plus active shows, we think 31 downloads is the median. So you're at the 50th percentile when you hit 31 downloads per episode. And everybody who continues podcasting and growing themselves, learning their craft, getting better at content, they all grow because the way that podcasts mostly grow is through word of mouth, through an existing audience. You can do things like advertise in podcasting apps. You could use something like Buzzsprout Ads. You can go on other shows. You can do cross promos. You can work with other content creators who are talking about similar content as yours. There's so many ideas of how to do the marketing, but the underlying piece is you got to stay in this game for a few years if you want to get a real audience, and the more of an existing audience you have, the easier it's to grow because you've hit this critical mass of listeners who will refer your content to their friends.
Now, you heard Alban say the magic word, at least it is in 2024. Everybody's really excited about YouTube. And I heard that Alban had a hot take when it came to video.
I think there's a combination of YouTube doing a keynote, new things that are cool that YouTube is doing around what they're now kind of referencing as shows. And then just being in the LA scene, I think you get a lot of like very well produced, high-end shows coming out of LA. And the combination felt like I came home hearing so much about if you want to be doing a podcast, you really need to be thinking about video. And I just kept hearing video. And I'm flying home thinking the whole time, I didn't get into this because I liked video. I got into this because I love audio. And for almost 15 years now, Buzzsprout has been audio only. And I think, here's the moment where everyone's telling us, you need to be video focused and audio is kind of the past. Wouldn't it be great if podcasting was just video? And I just keep feeling like, no, actually it would be significantly worse. YouTube is amazing. Video is amazing. Netflix is amazing. and it is different than radio and podcasting and audiobooks. So yeah, I feel like I'm going to be maybe the last person yelling at these conferences, maybe just do audio. Start out with one thing. Don't overload yourself with 15 things, videos, social, newsletter, blog posts, and podcast. Just do the one, any of them that appeals to you. And you can grow over time, but your podcast doesn't have to be a newsletter to be good. It doesn't have to be a blog to be good. It doesn't have to be a video to be good. It is fully valid to just be a podcast.
And if you follow the Dave Jackson line of thinking, it's always consider your source. Always consider your source. So you might go, well, of course, the guy from a platform that doesn't support video is going to say that. But I wholeheartedly agree with him. I've said it before. I'm not anti-YouTube. If you've got the bandwidth and the time and the budget, absolutely be a YouTuber and a podcaster. But I hate when I hear people go, yeah, I would start a podcast, and they've got a phenomenal idea, but they don't want to be on video. And you really don't have to be everywhere. And the key there is have to.
But what I don't love is this idea that everybody needs to do everything, whether it be podcasters doing all the different types of media, or YouTube doing all media can be there, music and video and audio and audiobooks and everything else. And Spotify does everything else. The world is a little bit better when people are so focused on one thing that Spotify does music better, not just better than Apple Music. They do better than anyone has ever done music before.
Recently, a study came out because for years it's been many podcasters don't make it past episode 7. And recently a study showed that now some podcasters never make it past episode 5.
What's going to happen is people are just going to stop. They're not going to do the newsletter and the blog and the social posts and the video and the podcast. They're just all going to end, and we're going to lose another creator to go back to their normal day job and never think about this again.
And that's a shame. And that is one other thing, talking about going back to the day job. Many people start off with the idea of podcasting and they want to make money. And that's perfectly fine. What I always say there is I'm not anti-monetization. Again, I'm the guy that wrote the book on podcast monetization and Profit from Your Podcast. But in the first couple of chapters, I point out that is not going to happen overnight. So I was talking with Alban, and one of his hobbies is running. And I asked him, I go, are you making any money running?
I'm not making any money. I love this idea. Something doesn't have to be monetized to also be valuable. I have not monetized my child, and yet parenting is the best thing that I've ever done.
And for me, I think one of the benefits of podcasting is the actual journey of creating your podcast.
I think creating something is just valuable for your soul. And so if you want to create in any of these mediums, I highly recommend to do it, and do it in a way that is affordable to you. I hope if it's a podcast that it's on Buzzsprout, you might hope that it's on Libsyn, but we would both just say, just go do something and see if you like it. And then over time, you will grow into new interests and hobbies. Maybe you'll drop it all and you'll become a pickleball fan like I have. And maybe you'll just go on to something else. But doing it all, really, it just kills the fun. And if you're not making money and you're not having fun, that's just a recipe for quitting.
And if you're a regular listener to the show, that I have a segment called Because of My Podcast. So when I ask Alban, I go, is there anything that has happened to you because of your podcast? And here's what he had to say.
I think the best thing about podcasting for me has been it helps me articulate my thoughts. You can probably listen to seasons of Buzzcast or episode after episode where we'll talk about similar things. And yet by going through the practice of writing out your thoughts and sketching things and then kind of trying to express it on air, and then I go do a guest interview, and then I go, oh, the way Dave asked that question helped me articulate something I believed. And it's only by the act of creation that I really understand that's what I really think. And so I think that is something that's happened because of my podcast.
And he mentioned Buzzcast. I'll have a link to that out at schoolofpodcasting.com/928. And one of the things that's fun about that show is they experiment, not a ton, but they do experiment. Case in point, after the main part of their show is over.
And the bit after is always going to be something unrelated to podcasting. We just recorded yesterday, and it's about, we talked about my experience seeing the solar eclipse a few days ago. There might be one about Kevin training for a run or Jordan doing an art class or something. It'll just be like, hey, here's something that's going on in my life that I found humorous or somewhat interesting. And yes, we're always experimenting with the show. And sometimes they're very intentional. Like maybe we're trying to humanize the show so that people feel a little bit more connection. Sometimes it's just being dictated by fun or let's try something. And if something works, then we can start recommending it to people who host on Buzzsprout because we need to learn like what is actually working for podcasting by experimenting.
And one of the things I want to point out here, notice that they do this at the end where their super listeners are. If you started off with, hey, let's talk about, I don't know, socks. Yeah, socks. I asked him, I go, have you gotten any feedback from the end of the show where you're just kind of talking?
Jordan just went off on something about, she needed to get a new pair of socks because she had a hole in one. And I was like, oh, you want to hear about socks? I've gone down a deep rabbit hole of learning about socks. And I start talking about alpaca versus merino wool versus nylon. And we had this segment of me telling what I'd learned about socks and what I bought. And then for multiple episodes, we had people texting into the show, giving their sock recommendations or asking for more feedback. And they wanted to know the exact brand because some people are going to buy them. And it helps build the community of the show because we're all, experts, and I'm doing air quotes here, experts in podcasting. And for some of the people who are listening to the show, they're true beginners in podcasting. And I think it can feel a little intimidating to be like, oh, I want to reach out to the show and talk podcasting. But they know I'm not a sock expert. And they know that Kevin's not a running expert. So they can share their feedback on those areas. And it's much easier for us to have a community.
And when I hear them experiment, sometimes I go, that might be something I want to use on my show. And one of the things that caught my eye/ears was they're now integrating texting into their show.
Years ago, we set up something called Slick Text. And Slick Text was, we were using it for communicating with our own customers at Podcast Movement. A bunch of people came, and I just want to be able to text like, hey, Tom's going in to, give his talk. Come on over. We're all meeting up at this restaurant. We're going to buy food and drinks for everybody. Come meet us. And so people subscribe to the text line. And we just done that for Podfest. And I was like, I think there's something easier about texting than emailing or recording a voice message. So I just put the number into our show notes and said, hey, text the show. And we talked about it on the show. And I think that week we got 10 people who texted us. Then we get 2,000 to 3,000 downloads an episode. And so that was a pretty good number. And then I experimented with it more, and we figured out how to actually link the number so that it would automatically open your messages. We figured out ways to communicate back to our audience. We started this segment where we were reading all the texts and commenting about them. And over time, it's become a very popular way for people to reach out to the show. The only downside, and we need to figure out a solution for this, is that Slick Text is like $30 a month, I think at the very low end. So it's not a great solution, but hopefully we'll find out something that'll be a bit more economical.
And if you're brand new to Buzzsprout and wondering what the heck it is, you're going to find out right after this. Back on episode number 793, I went over what is a media host and what's the difference between this one and that one and choosing which one you like. And of course, I have a free course on that. If you go to schoolofpodcasting.com/free courses, you'll see that one of them is it gets you to kind of test the tires on Buzzsprout, on Captivate, on Libsyn. And I need to add Blueberry to that. When I made that course, they were doing a major overhaul of their back end. But Buzzsprout has launched some new features. One of them was a new iOS app, and I understand an Android version is coming. So I asked Alban about what was the genesis of this podcast app.
For a long time, we said, why do you need a phone app? Because so many people would say, Buzzsprout's great, but I'd like an app. And we were like, we'll make the mobile experience even better. And they'd write in again and say, yeah, but it would be great if it's an app. We're like, well, what about a progressive web app? And no. We want an app. And I think we were slow on the uptake because for a long time we said, no, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. And eventually our customers and, just the use cases changed and it all started to fall in line. And so there were really, I want to say maybe 4 things that convinced me, okay, having an app makes a lot of sense. The first are notifications. Phones are really good at real-time notifications. We pretty much leaned on email for all of our notifications. Hey, you've got some opportunities in Buzzsprout Ads. We updated your episode is now published. Oh, we've got some ideas for you with Co-host AI, our AI tool. Lots of different notifications. Your weekly stats review. Oh, here, check out what happened this week to your podcast. All of those were going into email, but it's so much better to get those in real time so you can take immediate action. So notifications was one, but still not big enough for us. Then number 2 was stats. Now, I don't like the idea of them being this like habitual coming back, feeding you the stats addiction. But what stats are really good for is if you're running marketing campaigns, it's really valuable for you to see in real time, okay, I just started this ad on Overcast. I'm now seeing Overcast going up. Okay, now I'm going to put more money behind it. We're advertising on Twitter. Nothing is changing. I'm starting to think I'm targeting incorrectly before I start spending a bunch of money. So stats that are easily accessible are really good. But the positive side of stats is motivation. I recently started a new blog where I was just kind of blogging about my own things. And the first few days, I got 3 or 4 reads. And I was like, whoa, this is really cool. And then I was checking the next day and I got 6 reads. And I was so excited by those. If we publish a video and it gets less than 5,000 views, I'm going, oh, bummer. I wish it had been bigger. But there was something about it being new. And even though the numbers were relatively small, I was very encouraged by them. So I hope that these stats are encouraging, not habitual. And then last 2 real quick, sharing is so much more easy on mobile because if you're sharing to social media or taking a screenshot of your stats to celebrate on Instagram or sharing a link to an episode on Twitter, whatever it may be, that makes so much more sense because it's on your phone. Now it's sharing from your phone to your phone. And podcast management. I can't tell you, like the first day we launched, somebody wrote in and went, oh, this is so good. I realized I hadn't published on time. And so I was able to publish my episode while I was driving into work. I was like, okay, not while you're driving to work. Auto accidents are up in the US, and this is why. But I would love for you to get to work and say, now I'm empowered to publish. Or if you publish and you've got a typo or you missed a link to some resource you talked about, go update it right away and you're done.
One of the features that I love that is now has a new version in Podcasting 2.0 is chapters. If you listen to many of my episodes where I have multiple topics, you can skip from topic to topic to topic. And one of the things that Buzzsprout has is the ability to add a pre-roll. So this is some sort of clip, typically fairly short. And then there's also a post-roll. So this is one when the show is officially done, we're at the absolute end, you can tack on another message. And again, this can be as long as and short as you want. And so what I was worried about, I kind of assumed this, but I said, wait, what if you have everything set up and you've made your chapters so everybody thinks, hey, this is going to start at the 2-minute mark, and then you add a pre-roll? Like, is that going to mess up your chapters?
Yeah, we would update that timestamp. That's a pretty bad user experience if all your chapters were instantly ruined the second you updated it with any dynamic content or ads or anything. So a pre-roll, a post-roll, anything, all of those timestamps are stored relatively.
And you'll hear us talk about dynamic content. So many times people think dynamic must be ads, but I have a show on Buzzsprout. I also have a show on Blueberry, on Captivate, on Libsyn, Red Circle. I think that's all of them, because not only am I a Libsyn employee, I'm also a podcast consultant. So I try to keep up with everyone. And what I'm doing with the post roll is I actually end my show. Now, if you want to hear this, go to podcastingresources.net. The show is creatively called Podcasting Resources. And between you and me, not one of my best shows. It's really just me playing with Buzzsprout. But I'll talk about a resource, and then instead of saying, hey, welcome to the show, whatever, I basically, or not welcome, but hey, that's it for the show. What I do is like, hey, there's one more resource I want to talk about. It's the School of Podcasting. And then I do the typical ending of my show. Now, granted, that's the same ending over and over and over, but I could easily swap out that post roll. So realize dynamic content does not always have to be an ad. Now, the other fun thing about dynamic content is they also update your show notes. So if I change one post roll or pre-roll, it updates my show notes.
And you're touching on another one of my babies in the Buzzsprout app. So we built into Buzzsprout what we call show notes footer. And you go into your show notes and you click it and you open it up and you say, Dave Jackson, and here's my socials that I enjoy, and here's the School of Podcasting link, and here's my LinkedIn where you can learn more about me, whatever. But you put it in one, and instantly that is going to be on all of your episodes. Because the minute that Elon Musk says it's actually called X now, you don't want to go change that across 50 episodes. The minute that you say, I'm actually using TikTok a lot more and I want to push people there, well, you don't want to go update that in 55 spots. Well, now with the description footer, you can just go in there, make that change, and it shows up in all of your episodes.
Another thing that Buzzsprout has is Buzzsprout Ads, and this is where you can buy advertising on other shows.
There's been a lot of talk about how podcasts can do promo swaps. And some of the downside of promo swaps is they're a little bit arduous to set up. You're trying to find someone who's about the same audience type, the same show type. They're similar, but also about the same size, because if you're getting 10,000 downloads and I'm getting 2, it's not really a fair trade for us both to promote each other. With Buzzsprout Ads, you can just go on and through the power of money, being the universal currency, that you can just go on and buy downloads and shows. And you can go in and you can pick, this is the category, these are the shows that I'm interested in. And the shows can say, oh, you have really good, compelling trailer. I align with this show. I accept it. And now the money will go directly to those podcasters, and the show will automatically get the ad for your podcast. It'll automatically get links to your podcast. And so pretty much at scale, you can start getting promos into other people's podcasts.
And if you want to know more about Buzzsprout, again, you can go to schoolofpodcasting.com/279. I'll have links to free courses I have on that. And I asked Alban about, back in the day when he was first starting out, kind of like maybe you had a little bit of a hurdle to get over.
My biggest hang up when I started podcasting was imagining friends and family. Like I'd imagine specific people from high school or college. And I'd be like, if they see this link and they listen, they're probably going to think, man, Alban is so full of himself. He started a podcast. Oh my gosh, he sounds like an idiot. I was just imagining these people. And I think it was, my way of being like, I'm not going to put myself out there. I'm not going to say what I really think. It's going to be embarrassing. So I just want to not do it. And once I got over that hurdle, it got a lot easier. And I found myself becoming less judgmental towards other people, because we all start at this same place of just being bad at stuff. I was not good at podcasting when I started. I was not good at video when I started. I was not good at newsletters when I started. I was not good at dancing yet, actually. So you just start out as a beginner and you get better the more you do something.
And last but not least, if Alban has one pet peeve, what is it?
Looking down on other podcasters for not doing similar style content. There's a lot of, I think I go to Podcast Movement or I go to Podfest, I go to shows and people are kind of like, you need to do this. You need to be promoting all the time, or you need to be on video, or a lot of times recently, I've even made these jokes, we don't need another two guys sitting around having a beer, just chatting about politics, and it for a long time, I was like, we don't need that content. But now I think that's actually become a pet peeve. I'm like, you know what? What better way for people to learn that they're, drinking a beer, rambling about politics is not interesting than to start a podcast about it and let the marketplace of ideas tell them people don't want to hear it. I'm now really hesitant to tell people, no, you shouldn't be creating, because I think if you're creating content, and I really apply this to all mediums, not just podcasting, if you're creating content, you're going to learn a lot about yourself. You're going to learn a lot about the message that you have, and it's going to be good for you, regardless if you quit your job and you get to go do it full time, or you only ever get 50 downloads. It's still a really valuable thing for you.
Alban Brooke, head of marketing over at Buzzsprout. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you.
Super nice guy. So glad I made this happen. And thanks for Alban again for making it happen as well. schoolofpodcasting.com/928. I loved his take. And I've heard a few people now say this, how podcasting grows slower than most other media formats, but the connection is deeper. There was one thing that I was like, that I'm going to throw in here. I agree that you can only get better at something by continuing to do it. I was doing Spanish lessons daily. I was using a service called Duolingo, and then I saw an offer from Babbel for like a lifetime deal. So I was like, oh, that's better in the long run. But I'm not doing my daily lessons like I used to. And so consequently, besides I eat apples, which is yo como manzanas, which I'm still now a little rusty on, I'm not doing the Spanish thing. So you have to continue to do this. But there is one thing I want to asterisk on that. And that is you have to make sure you're going the right way. And what I mean by this is if I live in Akron, Ohio, if I'm driving to Cleveland and I head west, I am going in the wrong direction. And if somebody said, hey, are you at Cleveland yet? I'd be like, no. And they're like, oh, just keep going. Well, I would end up in California. I'm not going anywhere near Cleveland, Ohio. So yes, keep going if you've taken the time to get some people to give you some honest truth about your show and say, wow, this part was really good. That part was amazing. The thing at the end, not so much. You need that kind of information. And so if you haven't done that, then don't keep going, because you might be going in the wrong way.
Yeah.
Hey, I had Katie Brinkley on the last episode. Go to schoolofpodcasting.com/927. She's a social media guru. And in doing some research, because that's what I do when I have guests on, I found out that Katie did something. I was like, well, I'm going to borrow that idea. And that is, if you've been interviewed, say more than once, or you could do it with one if you wanted to, you can go into Spotify, find the podcast you appeared on, and add your track to a playlist. Then, here's an idea. If somebody says, hey, would you like to come on the show? You could say yes. And I use a tool called Brandly, where I send them, and there's my headshot, my bio in 37 different flavors. Here's my logo, everything they need. So I have a press kit, but I could also give them a link to the playlist and go, if you want to hear some of my other interviews, here's a playlist. Now that's cool for you. It's cool for the host, but it's also another way to pay back the person who had you on their show. And it's super simple to set up. And when I saw it, I was like, that Katie Brinkley, she knows her stuff. That's a great idea. And the other thing is, it's totally free. Takes maybe, 10 minutes, maybe 20 if you've been on a few shows. And the great thing is you can, number one, you can make it public. I don't know that I would let the public edit it because then somebody's going to stick in their stuff because sometimes people are just stupid and marketers ruin everything. It's sad but true. But I like the idea. I was like, you know what? Never thought of that. And again, if you want to check out Katie's interview, check it out, schoolofpodcasting.com/927.
Yeah.
And Alban talked about post-show things that they do. I have a section labeled bloopers. And like today's blooper is going to be an hour long. Holy cow, my mouth is not working today. And I just wanted to point out there are times in the bloopers, like last week, I gave you an actual money tip in the bloopers. So if you're not listening to the bloopers, you might be missing out on something. Now, before we get to the bloopers, we got stuff like this. Couple housekeeping tips here. If you have been trying to order a review on the Podcast Rodeo Show, that is a show where I grab a random podcast and see how long I can hang on. Kind of a first impression type show. I had turned off the ability to order a review when I went to LA, and when I came back, I kind of forgot it was off. And so, so if you go to podcastrodeoshow.com/store, you can now order your review. And you want to do that soon because that show is going to get rebranded and the price is going way up because it's ridiculously cheap right now. Also, a little heads up in case you didn't know, in the last 7 days, $2,941 of value for value have been streaming in the Podcasting 2.0 land. If your current media host isn't supporting Podcasting 2.0, well then email support and go, hey, when are you going to start supporting Podcasting 2.0? They typically build things that you ask for, and if you don't ask for it, you ain't going to get it. And with that, we're going to start wrapping it up. Of course, if you want to start a podcast, I would love to help you. Simply go to schoolofpodcasting.com/listener or use the coupon code listener when you sign up for either a monthly or yearly subscription. Get access to the coaching, which is unlimited. Yes, means if you want to meet with me on Monday and then Wednesday, I just tell everybody, if it's available, take it. You've got the courses, the step-by-step. We've got the free courses I mentioned if you're wanting to dip your toe in it. But if you're worried about it, you don't because you have a 30-day money-back guarantee. If you think there's a catch, there isn't. In fact, I've had probably 5 people from the School of Podcasting in the last 3 months go, Dave, you really need to raise your prices. And I am meeting with a business coach that I bounce ideas off here very soon. Can't promise anything, but it's just something I'm thinking about. So I would love to work with you. And that can be anywhere from, look, I don't know what to podcast about, to I'm already going. How do I grow? I'm already grown. I got an audience. How do I monetize? I handle everybody. It's all there. schoolofpodcasting.com/listener. Until next week, thank you so much for listening. I do appreciate it. Take care. God bless. Class is dismissed. And the show is at, where is it at? That's a good one. Podcastingresources.net. The show is creatively called Podcasting Resources. For the record, not one of my better shows. It's really just me playing son of a bitch. And so that podcast is called Best Podcasting. It's not called Best. It's just called, geez, you don't know the name of your show. And I switched from Duolingo to the other one, not Beelzebub. That's something. It's something to do with it's not. It's the other one. Oh, geez. What is it called? Babbel. Of course. Something with a B. I was close. Do I get any points? No. The judges say no. But when I saw that, I was like, that Katie girl. She's pretty smart. She's a thinker, that one. Is that racist? Wait, you can't say that. If your host isn't supporting, if your host is, it's just my mouth is just left early. I know, I'm not done yet. Don't leave me, mouth.